The book Bhimrao Ambedkar burned wasn't written by Manu. More than half of it was added centuries after the original. And chapter 5 is where you can catch the editors red handed. Verse 30, eating meat is no sin. Verse 48, same chapter, no flesh without harm. Same author. Both can't be right. One of them is a lie.
By minute 8 of this video, I'm going to show you the exact verse that proves which one and who needed it to be there.
Welcome to Manusmriti Chapter 5. 1927, Bhimrao Ambedkar burns the Manusmriti in public. He didn't pick the book at random, he picked it for one chapter. This one. 2,685 verses in this book. A ninth century scholar named Medhatiti
Flagged about 1471 as later additions, more than half. The version everyone fights about today is mostly a Calcutta manuscript edit frozen by British colonial officials in the 18th century.
the book defenders defend isn't original. The book critics attack isn't original. Both groups are pulling from the same forgery. And chapter 5, food, death, women, and one ritual called madhuparka is where the rewrite is most visible. 56 verses on food, what you can eat, what's allowed if you say the right mantras over it. And it is a mess. Verse 30, the eater who daily devours those destined to be his food commits no sin. Translation, meat is fine if a Brahmin says the right syllables. Verse 48, meat can never be obtained without injury to living creatures, and injury hinders heaven. Let him therefore shun the use of meat. Same chapter, opposite verdict. Now the part defenders never quote. Out of 28 verses on flesh eating, 25 condemn it, 3 defend it. 25 to 3. The original author was telling you not to eat meat. The 3 defending verses look stitched in. Look at any packet of chips. Big front saying natural, tiny back saying may contain artificial flavoring. Manusmriti Chapter 5 is doing the same trick, telling you no, with a tiny exception clause that someone, centuries later, blew up into a license. Quick check before we move on. Were you ever told Manusmriti supports vegetarianism or that it permits meat? Drop veg or non veg in the comments. I want to see the split. Verses 57 to 109, Death Rules. Ashaucha, impurity. What happens to the family for 10 days after a death? The framing sounds rough, but strip the language and look at what the chapter actually prescribes. 10 days of seclusion, no salt, no meat, no raised bed, no work. The community brings food to your house. After 10 days, you bathe, eat together, start again. Read that without the religious frame. That's bereavement leave. A 2000-year-old text figured out you should not be working in the first 10 days after your father dies, that the world should pause around you, that the community should feed you. Modern HR is still catching up. And here's the thing the editors didn't touch. The death section has zero contradictions. Every rule lines up. Whatever was already there was working. Hold that thought. It matters in 30 seconds. Did you notice something? The food section is a contradiction. The death section is internally consistent. That's not a coincidence. The interpolators didn't bother editing the death section. Whatever was there was working. The edited food, the edited women, and the edited one verse about a ritual offering called madhuparka, verse 41, which is the one I promised you at the start of this video. The chapter is telling you which parts are original. Listen for the silence and the noise. Verse 148. In childhood, a woman is to be protected by her father, in youth, by her husband, when her lord is dead, by her sons. A woman should never be independent. You've heard this verse weaponized. Critics quote it, defenders ignore it. Both groups treat one verse like it's the whole story. Now, the part nobody quotes. Verses 149, 150, and 151. The very next three verses turn around and put obligations on the man. He must provide. He must not abandon her, even if she is barren or argumentative. He must not strike her. He must not insult her in public. The rule isn't standing alone. It's part of a four verse unit structured like a contract. One side gets protection, the other side carries duty.
That doesn't fix everything. The protection model is still hierarchical. It still treats women as wards instead of agents. By any modern standard, that's a problem. But here's what's also true: both sides of this debate need verse 148 to stand alone, because as soon as you read 148 through 151 together, the easy version of the argument breaks. And that's exactly the kind of place where editors love to leave fingerprints. Screenshot 148 to 151 right now and send it to one person who has a strong opinion on this book. Word of mouth is the only growth strategy I have.
Verse 41, the one I promised you at the start of this video. Receipt time. Manusmriti verse 41 says, and I quote, at the madhuparka offering, at sacrifices, and at rites in honor of the ancestors, animals may be killed. Nowhere else. This is the verse defenders use to argue ritual meat eating was always permitted in Vedic tradition. One problem: the madhuparka isn't a meat ritual. The Madhuparka is older than Manusmriti. It's described in the Griha Sutras, household ritual texts that come before this Dharmashastra layer. The Apastamba Dharma Sutra gives the recipe: curd mixed with honey or milk mixed with honey. No meat, none. The Ashvalayana Griha Sutra goes further. It explicitly states there is no flesh in the Madhuparka. So, the older texts describe a curd and honey hospitality drink. Manusmriti 541 says you can kill an animal at this same ritual. Those statements cannot both be true. Somebody slipped that line into the chapter. This is what scholars call an interpolation fingerprint. Not a theory, not a feeling, a receipt. The older book says X, the newer book says X plus. By the way, you can also kill an animal here. And the newer book's exception conveniently lets a later religious group justify a practice the original ritual never permitted. Defenders, your move. If Madhuparka has no meat in the older texts, why is it in this verse? Drop your reading in the comments. I'll pin the most thoughtful answer at the top of this video. Here's the only thing I want you to take from chapter 5. Don't pick a side at the start of the chapter. Let the chapter pick the side for you. Read it. Note the contradictions. Note where the math doesn't add up. Note which sections feel ancient and which sections feel stitched in. Chapter 5 isn't the worst chapter of Manusmriti. It's the most useful because it's the one where the rewrite is visible. If you can read this chapter critically, you can read the rest of the book the same way. Comment intact or edited for each door. Door 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what the audience thinks. I'll pin the most upvoted reading. Next episode, Chapter 6, Forest Dwellers. even stranger than this one. Subscribe is the only way I know about you. See you in chapter 6.